Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another AdvisorShares AlphaNooner. Today, we're very excited to welcome back Trent Woloveck, Chief would be actually good, Co-Chief Strategy Director at Jushi. We're very excited to be spending some time talking about some very current events with the upcoming elections, how they impact very important markets like Pennsylvania and Virginia, as well as kind of get a sense of the current cannabis market and Jushi's strategy and direction at this current point in time. So if you're out there and you're joining, one, thanks for joining us on Monday and starting off your week right. But two, a good reminder, if you're out there and you have questions or comments, always a great reminder. You can throw them in the chat as we go along. Trent is super knowledgeable across cannabis in general, but also especially in these two interesting markets. So if you have questions, good reminder, you can put them in the chat and we'll get to them kind of as we go along. With all that said, Trent, thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. How is your week starting off?
It's good. It's Monday. Sometimes I forget it's Monday because we sometimes work through the weekends. We got earnings going on. We got some events rolling in Virginia with Pennsylvania. So it's a working weekend from time to time.
Kind of blurs everything together. If you never stop, you never have to restart again. I think that totally makes sense.
Morning. Yep.
That's good. Awesome. All right. Well, then, fantastic. Glad that things are working well and full steam ahead. You mentioned, earnings definitely coming up, something great and interesting for people to keep an eye on. But did want to kind of just chat through first kind of the election that's also coming up. I know it's November 4th, so not too far away now. Would love to talk through how it impacts Virginia and Pennsylvania. I think those are obviously very key markets people in the cannabis space have been keeping an eye on for a long time now, especially relevant for Jushi because you guys have some great footprint in both of those states in different ways. Would love to kind of work through maybe one at a time, I guess, how the upcoming election impacts both of those states and kind of where they might stand as we kind of go forward. So I don't know if you have a preference in terms of starting in Pennsylvania or starting in Virginia, but would love to kind of dive in there.
Yeah, look, they're both moving, but we can start in Virginia. That one is pretty clear cut. There's a definitive date for when something can happen, which is November 4th. And so both the House and the gubernatorial mansion are up for election. I think, looking at poly markets, we get a pretty good sense of where, things are at live versus polling, which is, maybe a little bit more backdated. And, you can ask subsets of folks, certain questions and they answer it one way. So, polling can be, as somebody who does polling, who's learned a lot about polling over the last, couple of years, it's kind of interesting. You got to take those things with a grain of salt. However, Spanberger in polls are, she's up anywhere between like 5 to 10 to 12 points. So, feel good on that front. Poly markets, which is live, real people with real money on the line. She's, she was kind of in the high 90s. She dropped back to like the low 90s. Now I think she's at like 97 when I checked this morning. So, feeling rather, comfortable on where that shakes out. Obviously, we'll see what happens come November 4th. Where we're at, late that night or early the next morning, on who's going to be, governor. But I can say, with pretty high certainty that the House will remain Democrat. There's a super strong leader there with the Speaker and Don Scott. He knows exactly what he's doing. Right now, they have a very slim majority, 51-49. I think that climbs, somewhere into the mid 50s. And so, that'll shake out as well. And then, we look to the session when it comes back in, which is nice in Virginia because it's consolidated. It's for 2 months. They have session every day, Monday through Friday, and then you either get something done or you don't. And so, we've had a bill that obviously has passed the House and the Senate for the last 2 years. That's unfortunately been vetoed by the current governor back-to-back years and then killed, 3 years ago. So we'll get that out of the way and look forward to being able to combat the public health and safety issue that's going on in Virginia, but across the country, um, with illicit stores, and bring a regulated adult use market to bear.
Yeah, Virginia does seem like it's kind of at the center of that hemp versus regulated real market in the cannabis space. So it feels very relevant to kind of what's going on more broadly. I feel like there has been more conversation around trying to close up the hemp loophole and all of that lately, more in like on a level that things seem to be moving forward on that front. Do you think, how much do you think that kind of colors what action we see in Virginia? Just because that I think has gained a little bit more momentum, a little bit more sort of voice leading up to the election.
Yeah, so keep in mind, Virginia, they were on the forefront of passing legislation because they saw what was happening in the Commonwealth. And so there's currently a total THC um, calculation done for finished product. There's a 2 milligram cap of THC per package. And then that's, you can go higher than that if there's a 25-to-1 CBD to THC ratio, which, people are definitely taking advantage of by throwing a little baggie of pure CBD white powder in with like a real hemp, excuse me, not real hemp, real THC cannabis gummy, and calling that a package. But good luck to those folks. They've already lost in litigation once; they'll lose in litigation again. And so, yeah, I think we've filed litigation against a hemp store. Well, 27 hemp stores there. I think you'll see some more litigation drop around some big boys here soon that aren't following state law. They think they're above the law, I guess. And then you'll see some, suppliers, distributors be named in some litigation as well. And so, Virginia got out in front of this. They were early in adopting. They've had it actually challenged. It held up in I think it's the Fourth Circuit of federal appeals. And so, there's been a lot of enforcement recently, in Richmond area, Henrico, and, kind of across Virginia. And so I would imagine that's going to continue. I know it's an issue that Abigail Spanberger understands quite a bit. She was in Congress when they passed the 2018 Farm Bill. So she has 3 young daughters, so she understands the issue. I mean, they have like a Simpsons smoke shop right down the street from her house. And so, don't tell me they're not marketing to kids. Don't tell me they're selling hemp compliant below 0.3% Delta 9 THC on a dry weight basis. It's complete and utter bullshit. So we're going to continue to prove that in courts. We're going to continue to educate folks at the state and local level, but also at the federal level. And, we'll see where the cards fall. I wish them the best of luck, but you can only pull the wool over people's eye for so long.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think a good job in terms of being able to push that forward on your own side, providing that education, but also providing the enforcement. Because I think education goes a far way, but ultimately if people are, going to try to skirt the law or try to kind of get around things, that is not going to go that far on that front. So I do think that enforcement needs to come into play at some point. So I think that's great to be on that side of things. In terms of implications for Virginia as a whole, if that goes forward, what are the implications for the Virginia market? And then would love to kind of pull that into Jushi specifically, because I know you guys have obviously a great footprint there.
Yeah. So, let's assume we get past the elections. Mm-hmm. Let's assume, we get into the legislative session that runs, mid-January to mid-March. We'll get a piece of legislation passed. That'll then go to the governor's desk. Because there's it's going to be a woman governor for the first time in history, which is pretty cool. She will either do one of, I guess, 3 things: do nothing, it goes into law; sign it, it goes into law; and then obviously there's a veto, and we start back over the following year. But let's just say, they do nothing or sign it. There's kind of typically there's 3 dates that legislation can go into effect for Virginia: July 1st, October 1st, or January 1st the following year. I think people, both on the legislative side, the regulator, which is the CCA, the Cannabis Control Authority, they've now been stood up for a couple years. They've gotten their, toes wet. We just implemented a seed to sale tracking system, metric, for the first time. And so, the foundation's there for, the program, both from a medical perspective to transition, but then, folks that, want to grow a business on the adult use side. Keep in mind, now that they're announcing numbers, it's kind of like run rate medical program around 200 or so million bucks. The JLARC, which is the economic folks that do the studies for the Commonwealth of Virginia, say it's about a $4 billion market. And so this idea that, we're some monopoly or we're going to bogard the whole market is complete and utter false, not a proper narrative whatsoever. And so I think, that coupled with, the finance committee chair, she, has said, SNAP and Medicaid's getting pulled at the federal level. She wants tax revenue in as quickly as possible. She's probably one of the top 2 most powerful folks in the Senate. And then the speaker, Don Scott, has said he wants this started as quickly as possible as well, to, both grow businesses within the Commonwealth, but also eradicate the illicit market. And so I feel good, like we'll get implementation of adult use sales, sometime between July 1st and let's call it October 1st. And so obviously, Jushi, we have 100,000 square foot facility right now. We're in planning and programming to build out additional square footage in the back of the facility that we owned. We just upsized our mortgage with FVC Bank. It's at like 7.5, maybe up to like a quarter and a half. We just expanded it from 20 to $24 million. And so, a lot of really good momentum there to be able to expand capacity. But also when we were building our stores, our 6 stores, we've built them in the anticipation of an adult use program there. So they're primed and ready to go. They're quite a bit bigger than what our typical store footprint would be. And so we're excited to, get that kicked off as well and start serving people that are 21 and over with, age gate, with independent third-party tested product, with stuff that's, not going to be hazardous to them, and really start to, garner revenue for the state for them to distribute it as they see fit.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know we've talked in the past about sort of, state budgets needing some support. And then I think as we were heading into the shutdown in terms of how that would turn up pressure to really turn these sources of revenue on, ultimately, do you view kind of the shutdown and kind of what we're seeing from a cannabis perspective, from a Virginia cannabis perspective, maybe also Pennsylvania, but Virginia specifically, do you see that as, ultimately not a net benefit, but positive pressure to make this change? Because the benefits for SNAP I know are turning off at the end of the month, for November 1st, so that's got to be pretty close in terms of between the 1st and the 4th of getting that vote in. And I'm sure in that time there are going to be a lot of people who are really demanding support and state help ultimately in that front.
Yeah, look, I definitely know it's affecting Pennsylvania and Virginia. So I got to imagine it's affecting pretty much every other state.
Yeah.
And, I'm probably conservative on some things and liberal on some other things, but, people not being able to to get food or assistance on that one. I'm probably lean a little bit more liberal on that one. I think it's something that we should take very seriously as USA citizens. And so, yeah, it's definitely ratcheting up the pressure for legislators to find some money, aka tax revenue, to fill that hole.
Yep. Yep. I mean, I definitely agree with you there. I think it would feel like I think politicians abandoning ultimately their constituents to turn away that type of money. Also, given that I think it does have wide support, I think in those states, and also like ultimately is trying to provide a better, more regulated, safer access to a lot of these drugs. So yeah, interesting to hear there. All right, well then that sounds good. In terms of impact, it seems like you covered. You're ready to go and expand when things turned on in Virginia. Is there any planning around if things kind of stay in their holding pattern? Is there any plan for that, or is that seeming pretty unlikely at this point?
I mean, I'll give two examples. I mean, we've brought on 2 rooms. We need to bring on a third to support the growth of medical in our region. Side note, a little qualitative with some quantitative data behind it. In September when there was the crackdown in DC, they were cleaning up the streets. They were enforcing quite heavily on the illicit cannabis stores in DC. And when we saw those get shut down, we saw pretty much a 10% bump week over week in our Arlington store, which is literally right across the river. And so that was a positive. I think we're seeing continued growth of the medical market there as people continue to, quite frankly, just know that it's there. And so we're excited about continuing to service the patients of Northern Virginia, but being able to add a safe, compliant, tested product for people that want to consume cannabis that are over the age of 21.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think being able to kind of build that brand recognition, that trust in this period of time, and then I would imagine that spills over ultimately into the rec side when that comes out. People tell their friends, people say, oh, here's why I went for the medical side of things, if people are looking for sort of a more general dispensary. So I'm sure at a certain point that will turn that way. So again, I think great to hear.
It was it's a funny story, but the former drug czar of Trump 1.0, when he came and toured my facility down in Manassas, he I guess sent some of his former FDA buddies and DEA buddies to try to get into one of my stores, and we actually turned them down because they're not patients. And so I guess the running joke is they call us Beyond Sober instead of Beyond Hello, because we don't let people that shouldn't be shopping into shop. And so I think again, as we continue to push forward on normalization of cannabis at a federal level, we got to continue to delineate the state regulated cannabis businesses from the intoxicating hemp, smoke shop, vape shop, direct to consumer garbage that's being pushed across the United States right now.
Yeah, that's a great story too. Are you inviting, I'm sure you've put out open invitations and we've talked in the past to other politicians. Have there been any accepted invitations lately for kind of the new administration in terms of getting a sense? Because that is a great facility to be able to tour, to see how it works, to see how it's a real business, maybe to be denied again also, cannabis if they're not allowed it.
Yeah, I mean, I've toured plenty of people through that facility recently. That's people that I thought would never want to take a peek at a regulated cannabis facility. And so I'm really excited, to be able to put that facility forward. We have a lot of great people that have worked in there, that have continued to grow with Jushi. They now, run other facilities across our portfolio. We've always done everything right there. And so to be able to show off kind of like our 16th chapel with folks to show how this should really be done is something that's, really cool and something, I take a lot of pride in, but I know everybody across Jushi does too. And so, yeah, we've toured some really cool people through there recently, people that you'd never think would come through to see a cannabis facility because, they're the ones, chopping down the plants or, enforcing cannabis in the past. And so I think that the continued education, the delineation between, good actors and bad actors is going to continue to happen. And, I always like to say the cream rises to the top. We don't know how long it's going to take, but it always will.
Yep, that is true. Some great points, I think very well said. All right, well then I'm seeing a question on the federal side, but I did want to cover at least Virginia, or not Virginia as well, Pennsylvania as well. What's different there? I know also kind of the election element is in the mix for them, in terms of also being able to open up a real recreational market there.
Yeah, look, I think the first important piece is Senate Bill 49, which was put forward by a Republican senator from Erie, Dan Laughlin. And so, that's really outlining a new regulator for the medical cannabis space, eventually the adult use cannabis space, and then also enforcement around intoxicating hemp. We know that's, another big issue. We've seen, raids happen there. Last week, for example, in Dauphin County, which is like Harrisburg area. And so they popped, I think it was like 14 stores, but most importantly, they popped like an actual distributor. So that'll give you a lot of information. But I think getting that set up is going to be an important step in the right direction, just like what we did in Virginia with the CCA. I think most importantly, people are always like, oh, President Pro Tem Kim Moore, she's so anti-cannabis. She's actually not. She actually voted for this bill. And so I think that's like a big piece about, where and how the Republicans' thoughts have transitioned around adult use cannabis in Pennsylvania. And so I think we'll see, that be voted on in the floor. They're still trying to get through a budget, unfortunately. And so I think that will get out when that can, and then jump over to the House. Let's hope the House, which is controlled by Democrats, they actually follow through on something they say they care about. We had the leader, Bradford, stand up when they passed an adult use bill and, speak about the intoxicating hemp smoke shops for about 5-6 minutes. And so I hope he follows through on this and getting it to the governor's desk. And then, game on from there. I think, we've continued to hear the governor say he wants adult use. And so, maybe this is another channel for that to happen when it gets to his desk, but we'll see. They got to get something done. I sometimes, wonder quietly to myself, but I guess I'm saying it out loud now. If Governor Shapiro forgot that he had to run again for governor for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in 2026, I think he just thought he was going to run for president in 2028. And so I think it's important that he, continues to show Pennsylvanians that he hasn't forgot about them. And so, we'll see what happens, but fingers crossed, candles lit, prayers said, that we get something done, because we've been on the doorstep of an adult use market in Pennsylvania for the better part of 3.5 years now. So it's time.
Yes, it is true. It is true. But I think when Pennsylvania turns on, again, should be a great market. And I think for you at Jushi, you guys have been ready to go basically on day one. If things change, you're ready to rock, ready to start, making the most out of the market. So I think.
Yeah. And just to go back to your question that you asked in Virginia, what's our current state? Like, we're seeing growth in the medical market because our products have gotten so much better, because of the brands that we've launched, because we have better product, better flower. And so, we've worked really hard. The whole team has to turn that facility around. Turning around a GP is like turning the Titanic, except for we didn't hit the iceberg, which is a big fucking deal. And so That feels really, really good. We're expanding our current footprint to be able to produce more biomass. We have programming. We're working feverishly on, expanding, within that building, more area for canopy. And so, not only are we going to be ready for adult use on the retail side, but I think, we're pushing hard to get ready on the biomass side as well, to be able to supply, maintain the medical market, but also be ready for, folks, again, that want to buy safe tested product for when they're over 21 that want to consume cannabis.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I know you've been obviously in Ohio as well. So I feel like that has the same kind of footprint, the same kind of playbook in some ways. I know each state has its own individual flavor and a little bit of changes in nuance there, but ultimately being able to kind of replicate that process, I think makes a big difference. Probably also, I wonder if you're able to kind of, tap the data in terms of what does well on the recreational side to kind of prep and be ready for when those markets move in both Virginia and Pennsylvania into the recreational side. So I think, very exciting stuff. You're right. It has been a long time, but I do think between just the continued popularity of cannabis, between kind of the mounting pressure on having unregulated or sort of illicit substances hanging around. But then also, I do think that the shutdown is going to add a good amount of pressure in terms of really needing to put this in place now in terms of the urgency element. That seems the most important right now.
Yeah, look, Ohio is a great example of what we're going to be able to do and have done to get ramped up in an adult use market. We've 2.4x our cultivation there. We've actually increased. We're at 90 plus grams a square foot there in that facility. We're in the very high 20s from a THCA perspective. And so, we've been able to, two and a half X practically. I think we'll do kind of, something very similar in VA, and maybe like 50% in PA, and still be able to maintain and increase quality of the biomass coming out, which is a big deal. We've gotten almost six additional stores open for adult use there. Our sixth one will be coming this quarter before the end of the year. And so, we'll have 7 stores, up and rolling and, continuing to kind of increase the footprint there, we're still operating under the medical regs there. And so, trying to combat, the illicit store, which unfortunately in Ohio is on every street corner there. And so a lot of confusion for consumers. And we saw an executive order. I think, we've seen that be blocked, with a TRO for the time being. Legislation's being worked on there in Ohio. And so, we'll see what kind of shakes out there. But, same story, different state.
Yeah, but again, I think being able to operate really well in Ohio is a good sign, I think, for these coming states, hopefully. I am curious, you mentioned Ohio seems to have a lot of illicit, storefronts, and that's kind of confusing for consumers. What's sort of the best few ways that you found so far to be able to help at least guide, a consumer to make, at least they're making a decision, they're understanding what is kind of legal and what is kind of not, in terms of, is it just signage? Is it good sort of messaging when you're talking? What's sort of the way to reach those people, really?
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't do anything like that in Ohio. And so people are left to fend for themselves. We had, I saw a study from Villanova University, which was done for Pennsylvania, but I think it was something like in the mid 70s that people thought, these smoke and vape shops or hemp stores or whatever you want to call them, illicit shops, were, regulated and overseen and had good product that's been independently third-party tested, all of which is not true. All you have to do is look at the Philadelphia Inquirer article where they secret shopped. And so, I don't think there is an answer because there is no way to combat having an illicit store on every street corner, or in some cases in Philadelphia, all 4 street corners. And so that's going to just take time. It's going to take education of, quite frankly, legislators, for law enforcement, to be able to have um, conviction when they look at and understand and get complaints about these stores.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, again, I appreciate the work that you do, that Jushi does to kind of provide that education, because I know it takes time, it takes a lot of good messaging, but I think people do want to know, so appreciate it. Also, will echo the comments here that you do a great job, I think, in the industry, so appreciate, I think, you being an advocate in this space and breaking things down well. All right, final kind of question. I know we've talked about the state story a ton, just kind of getting a temperature check on where we are on the federal side of things. I know we've had comments from Trump and some videos and kind of breadcrumbs that rescheduling is in the mix in some way, but of course we're not there yet. Would love to hear kind of where we are temp check wise from your perspective, and of course to reiterate the impact for Jushi.
Yeah, so I think I saw Stevie ask the question, how does rescheduling affect Jushi? So
Mhm.
um, the one thing I know for certain on rescheduling when it happens, it puts a stop to our uncertain tax liability. That's what we have to put it on the balance sheet as per the auditors. It's a tax dispute, quite frankly, and there's a big difference between the two. When we talk about that uncertain tax liability for cannabis, um, that includes all interest and penalties that we could occur, and so it's a super inflated number, from my perspective. Somebody who's had a tax 280 tax tax issue get all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And
Mhm.
so, I have my thoughts and feelings about how we've been handled on the tax front from a federal perspective, but I'll keep those to myself. But as far as it goes for the we kind of view it in three different buckets. So you have your adult use sales that we've had, you have your medical sales that we've had, and then you have your penalties and interest that you could occur, if we ever get audited. And so we've seen other businesses go through and get audited, and then pretty much settle for like 25 cents on the dollar with payment over time. I feel really good about where our strategy's at, with legal letters from real folks, and so I think we're kind of covered on the medical front. The adult use front is what it is, and it will be. But like that's like a problem for future Trent in like 2030, and
Sure.
so future Jim and future John in 2030. So I think that's been way overblown by folks, but I understand wanting them to protect the downside, and so it's a fine balance. But the one thing, again, going back to the question, the one thing I know for certain, 280 tax liability stops when rescheduling happens going forward. I don't think we get any retroactive relief for that one. That's going through the courts, and it's actually getting up to the U.S. Supreme Court here shortly.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's that. I think rescheduling then like kind of kicks off the dominoes that we expect to happen there shortly after, whether that's at the state level, and or at the legislative level at the federal side. And so, what does that look like? The Climb Act, Safer, are kind of like the top two priorities right now, and then we work towards a full descheduling and a full normalization of cannabis. And so, in a world where crawl, walk, run is just the reality of how things work, that's what this is part of. And so, we'll continue to push and educate on that front. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. Everything sits on President Trump's shoulders, and this is something that is pretty easy to steal away from former President Biden and his ability to mess this up with Chuck Schumer beyond belief. And so here we are coming back to, let's get something done so we can all move forward in the industry like we should. That's on the state regulated side. And then obviously there's been a bunch of chatter around, what it looks like to close the loophole from the 2018 Farm Bill. And, that's getting a lot of momentum with this like mini bus approach package that's coming fast and furious if we can ever reopen the federal government.
Yeah, that's tricky. I know there's been talk around it happening the end of last week for everything to get resolved. It doesn't seem like there's much clarity in terms of when the shutdown actually ends. It seems like it could go on for quite a bit longer, so we'll have to wait and see. But ultimately, I think that's obviously an issue that needs to be resolved at some point soon. So hopefully
the industry's best buddy, Chuck Schumer, coming through again. What can I say?
It's true. Yeah, I think, it has been tough. I know Trump loves a dunk on that front too, but I feel like just even on the Biden side of things, I think that's been his favorite thing, just from listening to him talk in speeches. I don't think Schumer needs any more, but I think between he and Biden, they could have some fun on him getting a cannabis win. We'll have to wait and see. So interesting space, interesting point in time. I know you guys are gearing up for earnings coming up soon. So I'm guessing you are very, very busy with everything else. How are you keeping focused, keeping in tune, aside from working on the weekends and working all the time? Any products that you're throwing in the mix? How are things moving as you get ready?
Yeah, we launched this like kitchen sink gummy, which is got a bunch of different minor cannabinoids to go with the THC. Nice. So that that's been kind of cool to see. We've launched a bunch of new genetics through the system that have just been knocking it out of the park from a few new partners. And so, getting to test those out every once in a while. This shameless plug for a Cheetah Live rosin pen. When I need to go to sleep for a couple hours, I usually can enjoy that. So it's exciting. The fundamentals of the business continue to be strong. Our earnings are November 4th. And so, we'll be able to talk a lot more about the numbers after that date. But, a lot of really exciting things going on with Jushi from a fundamental perspective, set aside all the upside on the legislative policy front.
Yeah, I think interesting time teeing up for cannabis in general, but I think for Jushi specifically, it should be interesting between Pennsylvania, Virginia, and more other states as well, of course. And also, of course, the larger federal picture. So we'll have to wait and see. Very exciting. Looking very much forward to earnings and how that all goes. For people who are kind of tuning in and want to listen to the call, where should they go? Even if they just want to also even just kind of learn more, see more about, about Jushi itself.
Yeah, it's jushico.com, jushico.com.
That sounds good. Perfect. All right, everyone out there, take a look. Trent, thanks so much as always. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks for being on. Thanks for some great insight in those states and beyond. Really appreciate it. And we hope to catch you next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Have a great day.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.